Hi, Grayson and Isley. It's story time with Grandpa. I hope you guys had a great day today. I just got done looking at 4 deer, beautiful white-tailed deer. They came right up to the rock where I feed the deer the corn. They put their heads down, ate the corn, and then turned right and looked straight at me. I was standing there watching them. Amazing. God made some really cool deer, and they come here at St. John's Sanctuary and they eat the grain. I get to feed the deer every day. It's so much fun. We are going to feed the deer at the cabin. We're going to reinstate corn feeding and salt licking so we can get those deer to come back to the cabin and see them. On to our story. Mr. John Smith took Susan, James, and Stephen out of the log cabin onto the front porch and back around to the back. He came around the side of the house, and there was a small door. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a golden key. As he lifted up the key, the sunshine struck the key, and it shined in beauty. It was astonishing. Susan looked at it and said, "Oh, please, can I open the lock? Can I open the door? Please, Mr. John Smith." He said, "Of course you can, Susan." And he gently passed the key over to Susan, whose fingers took it with trembling and put it into the keyhole. She heard a click as she turned the key, and the door slowly opened. James and Stephen looked inside, and as they were looking, suddenly the door got bigger and bigger, and the opening got bigger and bigger, and Mr. John Smith and Susan and James and Stephen found themselves in the middle of a big cave. The door had vanished, the key had vanished, but there they were in a cave with real rocks and water running down the side and the sunshine shining through a hole in the roof of the cave. "I can't believe this," said Stephen. "Where are we? What happened to the door and the key?" Mr. John Smith just smiled, and a big grin came across his face. "Children, we're in Magic Land. We stopped being outside with the door and the key. Now we're inside Magic Land. Go, explore, see what you can find inside the cave." So Stephen went off around the corner and saw some rocks and saw some water coming down the side of the rocks. And then he noticed there was a steel rail coming out of the rock and running along the ground. And next to that rail was another rail about 16 inches apart. 2 rails running straight along the ground for as far as the eye could see. "What's going on?" said Stephen. James came over and said, "Hey, it's train tracks. These are the rails of a train track. Let's go find out where it takes us." "Please, Mr. John Smith, can we go walking on the train tracks and see what'll happen?" "Of course you can. This is Magic Land. This is a time for adventure." So all of them grabbed arms and they started walking along the train tracks. Walking along. They went by some other rocks. They went by a little rail fence. They went down and then around and up again, and then they turned right and took a sharp turn, and then they came into a clearing, another big room. And do you know what they saw? They actually saw a train, a real big giant passenger train. It was a steam engine with 3 cars. "Ha! I can't believe it," said Stephen. "A real train. Please, can we go ride it? Can we go ride it?" So the 3 children and Mr. John Smith hopped on the train, and they began to look through the cars and go up into the engine and look at the engine. And James said, hey, do you think we can get this thing started? Do you think it would actually run? And Mr. John Smith kind of looked around, and he looked at the controls, looked at the conductor's wheel. He looked back at the coal car. Everything is here, children. I think all we have to do is start her up and stoke the fire. So that's what they did. James got the black shovel, and he shoveled into the coal car where all the big coal was kept, and he put it inside the engine and lighted it up, and he soon got a fire going inside that steam engine. Well, he kept stoking the fire, more coal, more coal, more coal, and pretty soon the gauge went up and up and up, and it came to the point of steam. And the steam was what was needed to push the pistons, and the pistons push the wheels, and the wheels go, and the train takes off. So Stephen said, hey, Mr. John Smith, can I pull the train whistle? We're about ready to move. So he pulled down the whistle. Woo! Woo! And James kept stoking the fire, and pretty soon Mr. John Smith twisted the conductor's wheel, and the train started moving. Yay! We're actually on a train ride. This is fantastic. They kept going. They went faster and faster and faster, and Stephen and James took turns shoveling the coal into the engine. Shovel and more, and shovel and more. And the gauge, the steam gauge, kept getting higher and higher and higher, and the wheels turned faster and faster, and the train was shooting down the train tracks and out of the tunnel and into a big, beautiful pasture land. Huge meadows with big buttercup flowers. And over on the side was some deer, and there was a raccoon, and there was a butterfly, and there was a robin and a redbreast and a hawk, and all kinds of beauty of God's creation, more beautiful than the children had ever seen back in their own home. They were amazed. Where are we? Said Susan. What is going on? We're in Magic Land, said Mr. John Smith, where everything is beautiful. All of God's creatures are here. All the things that he made specially for man to enjoy are here. The glory of the butterfly, the glory of the birds and the deer and the raccoon and the turtles, everything, all creation is happy here. So they kept going faster and faster and faster, and the wheels kept spinning. And Mr. John Smith kept grinning. He grinned a big grin as loud as he could because he knew what was going on. And the train kept going faster and faster, and Stephen looked down ahead and he said, the train tracks end. Look, up there at the foot of that mountain, the train tracks end. There's no more tracks. We're going to crash. Mr. John Smith just kept on smiling. We're not going to crash, children. This is Magic Land. This is the land of goodness and beauty and truth and wonder. Just wait and see what happens. So they kept going faster and faster, and the train shot ahead across the pasture, and it came to the end of the train tracks. And it looked like they were going to crash right into the mountain. But instead, the train, as it got toward the end of the track, suddenly lifted up. It lifted up into the air. The children were flying. They were flying in their own steam engine train. They took off right up over the mountain and flew over the mountain with all of them safe and sound, and Mr. John Smith smiling to beat the band. This is unbelievable, said James. I've never been flying in a locomotive before. Where are we headed? How beautiful is this? He looked down, he could see horses and dogs and birds and lions and every form of creation he could see underneath him as they flew over this gorgeous pasture. and up, 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 higher and higher, going almost into the clouds. This is so amazing. Is this a dream? Said Susan. Are you sure that we're not just having a dream? I mean, this doesn't really happen in real life, does it? Mr. John Smith just smiled away because he knew what was happening. But the children had to experience it to believe it. I will continue this story tomorrow. I hope you guys have a fantastic sleep. Be kind to your mother and love her. And of course to your dad too. And have a wonderful rest. I'll see you tomorrow.